Let's begin with a word of prayer. Father, as we move through our lives on a daily basis, we're aware of the law. We know what it means to break the law, and we know what it means to fulfill the law. Well, Father, that's not the most important part, and we've learned that from your Son. That to have true justice, we have to have mercy, grace, and love to balance the law. Help us remember both parts of that in our daily lives. And this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, June 12th of 28 A.D. We're going to be down in Judea at a place called Nob. Okay? We have three texts that we want to look at. Guess they are Mark, Luke, and Matthew. Okay? So, who would like to look up Mark? Is that you? Mark
Okay.
2:23 through 3:6. Then, we're going to go to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, beginning with verse 1.
I got it.
You got it? Okay. And that leaves the really long one.
Oh,
Matthew.
let me do the long one.
Okay, you do the long one.
You're gonna
Matthew.
do 6 verse 1.
Matthew 12.
Okay, hang on a second here.
Okay.
Luke 6 is what?
Chapter 6, verse 1. And we'll go from there.
Okay, you want me on Matthew?
Matthew 12:1. And we'll go from, I'll let you know when the time comes.
Okay.
Okay. Let's start out then with the Gospel of Mark, which is the shortest of the bunch here. Mark 2:23 through 3:6.
Okay, Mark 2:23.
Yes.
All right. One Sabbath day, as Jesus was walking through some grain fields, his disciples began breaking off heads of grain to eat. But the Pharisees said to Jesus, "Look, why are they breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath?" Jesus said to them, "Haven't you ever read in the scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God during the days when Abiathar was high priest and broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests are allowed to eat. He also gave some to his companions." Then Jesus said to them, "The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath."
We'll stop there for a moment. Let's look at this part. What do you see?
Well, they were wandering through and got hungry and started eating from a farm field,
Okay.
which in those days was legal.
It was legal, okay.
Off to the edges anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a field, and they're walking through one morning, and they reach out into the field legally and grab the head of the grain. So it's near harvest time,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And then have you ever harvested wheat?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, when I was back elsewhere in fields, we would harvest them like this, then you rub them, blow away the chaff, and what you have is the wheat kernels.
Mm-hmm.
And we would test it for dryness. And it's very tasty, by the way. And that we would then eat.
Turns into gum.
It turns into a paste if you don't swallow it quick enough. But it's chewy and it has a certain flavor. It depends on what you're growing. Okay? But that's how you do it. You just rub it, blow out the chaff, and then eat it. Okay, now, we know that's what he's doing. What does it tell you? Is there anything of interest here? Anything you weren't aware of?
Well,
I thought you
they
said-
pointed out that,
I thought you said it was not lawful.
no, it is lawful.
Why does they say
okay,
here it's not lawful?
Okay. It was the Sabbath.
Yes.
They were objecting to the work aspect of it, because obviously that's work plucking the grain and rubbing it before you put it in your mouth.
Would eating oatmeal with lifting with a spoon, would that be considered work?
So that wasn't preparing it.
So preparing a thing is what would be called work.
Well,
So women work and men eat, right?
so we know that they defined work in very specific terms.
Yes.
And of course, they always had to find some kind of loopholes that they could use when they needed to. But they were very pious in that regard.
Yes, they were. Very much so.
And certainly harvesting grain out in the field is work. Women, I think the women mostly did their big cooking on Friday
Sure.
so that they didn't have to cook.
Yeah.
Now, I noted you said that harvesting the grain was illegal on the Sabbath. Is that correct? That's what we think, that to take, that's work. Or is it the part where you do this that's the work?
Who
How
knows?
far were they walking?
Well, there better be within a Sabbath day walk, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Unless they brought some dirt with them.
Okay, start again. Okay, so there are little factors that we're going to look at as we go through this. We're making some assumptions, of course, and that's what I'm kind of going to caution you on some of your assumptions. Okay? So, the Pharisees seem to be standing right there next to the field watching him. Maybe they were walking behind him like the police, you know, what are you doing? And anyway, apparently there's at least one Pharisee sitting around or standing around or whatever, right? And sees them pluck and eat the grain. Okay?
So we do that with blackberries around here. We may not have wheat growing all over, but when you pass by blackberries or something, it's not uncommon to pick a few and pop them in your mouth.
That's true. Can you harvest them? Are you allowed to harvest blackberries?
We do, whether we like it.
I hope so. We've done it for years.
Yeah.
I have a whole freezer full of blackberries.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So picking a few doesn't seem to be a problem, but if you walked into somebody's yard and started picking their blackberries, they might be unhappy with that because you're trespassing or whatever. Okay, so same concept there. All right. So anyway, Jesus' response was what?
So the purpose of the Sabbath, he was pointing out.
But before you do that, you got to back up. What did he say to them first?
Haven't you ever read the scriptures?
Haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Haven't you ever heard about this David guy, King David, who was running away from Saul at the time, and he encountered at a place called Nob.
Oh, that was Nob.
Yes, that's this Nob where David and the priest come on, what was his name?
Whatever.
Yeah, well, I got to look at it. I'll know it.
Abathar.
Abathar, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, where the priest allowed David to eat this special bread that nobody else but the priest is supposed to eat.
But he did assure them that they were clean. David did.
I'm sure of that, yes. So he's referring to that. That's just why I assume it happened at Nob, because it's a local tradition. That's why I located it at Nob. It doesn't say so in the scripture. But because of the example he used, I'm assuming that's approximately the general area where this happened.
Because that's the way Jesus did things.
Because that's the way Jesus
But
did
it
things.
wouldn't have mattered. All these people knew the Torah. They knew the Old Testament.
Right, but I just have to be geographically appropriate if I can be.
So where is Nob?
Just to the northeast, and I'll show you when we get in there.
Okay.
Just a little bit to the northeast of Jerusalem.
Oh,
So he's in the Jerusalem area, okay? And he says, don't you remember that this happened? That feeding David was more important than the law saying he shouldn't be allowed to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pharisee was reminded by Jesus of this event, and then he said what?
Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.
Right. It's more important that the Sabbath is made to make my life better, I'm not made there to make it be happy, make it important.
You can draw the same thing with an ambulance or with a fire truck. They're allowed to speed.
Yes.
They're allowed to go through a red light,
Yes.
right? And it's for the betterment of whoever they're helping.
Right. That is a social agreement that's been made.
Yes.
And that's, okay, so there we have it. Okay, anything else about this first part? It's okay. All right, let's finish with the second part, which is 3:1 through 6.
Jesus went into the synagogue again. Oh, wait a minute.
Yes.
So the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath. I
Right.
missed that part. Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, "Come and stand in front of everyone." Then he turned to his critics and asked, "Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is the day for doing evil? Is this a day to save life or to destroy it?" But they wouldn't answer him. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. Then he said to the man, "Hold out your hand." So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. At once the Pharisees went away and met with the supporters of Herod to plot how to kill Jesus.
Okay. Whew. Wow.
They're just looking for things.
Well, there are reasons for that, aren't there?
Is this farther into the ministry? Because it's
Nope,
did
this is-
they started plotting?
Chapter 3. This is very early in the
Okay, so
ministry.
they just really didn't like him.
Except we do know that scriptures are not necessarily written in chronographic order.
Chronological order.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, we're not going to get too much into that yet. What we want to do is, let's take a look at this. A man has a hand that's deformed in whatever way. Is it a life or death situation to heal it?
It might be, depending on what's wrong with his hand.
But it wasn't apparently. Apparently,
Yeah,
it might have been.
was
but
it
doesn't-
septic?
That doesn't seem to be the issue here.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so the question is, am I allowed to do a nice thing, a good deed? You know how you do it on Sundays, on a Sabbath day. Is it okay to do something good that seems to be like work? Nowadays, what would you say? You know,
Of course.
you're supposed to rest on the Sabbath, and you go fishing.
Mhm.
That's not resting. That's work. Climbing out there, throwing things.
Mhm.
By definition, okay? I go dig holes or whatever. So this is the issue. The question coming at Jesus is it a life or death situation? If it's a life or death situation, then it seems to be appropriate. You can do something about it. But if it's not life or death, you can't. Just wait for the Sabbath to end and do it the next day. What is more important? The law or mercy.
And grace.
Well,
Well, Jesus would say mercy and grace.
Jesus
Love.
did say that.
Yes.
However, remember the Pharisees' perspective. The law is very important. If they allow people to violate the law, then that comes back on the whole nation.
Hello.
Where do you drop off food for the bank?
Around the corner this way, there's a box right in front of the door on the other side of the courtyard.
Okay,
A
thank you.
big wooden box.
So the question is, if we as those who monitor it, the Pharisees, if we allow people to violate the law, they have violated the covenant with God and the nation will suffer. They have a very strong reason to watch this rabbi, and a very good reason from their perspective. So don't downplay them. Don't make them look like they're just nasty people. They're not. They have very good reason. Now, I think their thinking got a little skewered over the years.
But that is their job to teach people and to make sure they know how
And
to
to
abide by
enforce
the law.
the covenant that they made.
Yes.
It's all part and parcel. That's
Yes.
So if he's violating it, what is the punishment for violating the law?
So, it depends on the offense. Well,
Well,
the covenant, yeah.
Death.
Yeah, that was it, wasn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
it was.
Okay.
For anything?
No,
No, there are certain, there are guilt things, you can do offerings and sacrifice, things like that.
there were different levels of,
Right, penalties for different levels of,
We'd all be gone.
Well, we are, because we have all sinned and fallen
Wages
short of
of
the glory of
sin,
God.
yeah.
We are condemned.
Right.
However, through the mercy of God, through Jesus Christ, we are saved. So, they didn't have that at the time. They have an issue that they will later resolve. Okay, anything else you want to ask about what Mark has said? All right, then let's go to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, verses 1 through 11. And we'll do it in half, and I'll stop you halfway through.
Now it came about that on a certain Sabbath, he was passing through some grain fields, and his disciples were picking and eating the heads of grain, rubbing them in their hands. But some of the Pharisees said, "Why do you do what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And Jesus answering them said, "Have you not even read what David did when he was hungry, he and those who were with him? How he entered the house of God and took," I can't even read that.
Yes.
"And took and ate the consecrated bread, which is not lawful for any to eat, except the priest alone, and gave it to his companions. And as he was saying to them, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath."
Okay, we'll stop there for a moment. Any changes from what we read in the Gospel of Mark? Anything you note that's different?
Well, they pointed out that the consecrated bread was only for the priests.
Correct? Okay. And those are the ones who were supposed to eat it. We got that.
This one said the disciples were doing it.
Not Jesus. The disciples were. And this one adds rubbing it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's the work.
Yeah, it's
That's the work.
Yeah, don't try that with blackberries.
Oh, no.
Well, I'll
No.
take care of blackberries in my own way too. That's another issue altogether. So, but in this case, with the wheat, it works out very well. So this was the breaking of the law according to Luke. Okay? Anything else you notice that's different?
why would they let the priests have it? And
Oh, because it's part of the sacrificial system. Someone has made the offering of the fruit, of the wheat or whatever, and it's given to the priest. It's part of their, like the tax.
It's their pay.
Yeah, it's their pay.
And it
It's
goes-
consecrated, and they are consecrated so they can eat it.
And it goes on the altar for like a week or couple days
Right.
or a week or something, I forget now. And then after that, that's an offering to God. And then
Right.
after the time period is over, then the priests are allowed to eat that.
She means after it's dried out and crusty.
Well, crusty
Yeah.
is good. Hopefully they wrapped it, never mind pig. But anyway, or it could be sold on the market for money. That is something that later will happen. Okay, let's continue, please, with where we were on 6, wherever it was,
6.
on another Sabbath.
And it came about on another
On
Sabbath
another Sabbath,
that he entered the synagogue and was teaching, and there was a man there whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and the Pharisees were watching him closely to see if he healed on the Sabbath, in order that they might find reason to accuse him. But he knew what they were thinking, and he said to the man with the withered hand, "Rise and come forward." And he rose and came forward. And Jesus said to them, "I ask you, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good, or to do harm, to save a life, or destroy it?" And after looking around at them all, he said to them, "Stretch out your hand." And he did so, and his hand was restored. But they themselves were filled with rage and discussed together what they might do to Jesus.
anything different here than what we had in the Gospel of Mark? The answer is yeah, we got a number of things.
Yeah.
Sounds about the same.
Of course it does, but I'm not going to let you get away with that.
So you know which hand.
Now it specifies it was the right hand,
You also, which,
which is very important.
oh yeah, because that's the clean hand.
That's the clean hand.
That's the
You're
one
allowed
you
to
can
eat with
eat
that. The left hand is used for
If,
more personal items.
if his right hand were unusable, that would force him to eat with the dirty hand, and he could never enter the temple.
Let me help you with this. The dirty hand, that's the left hand is what you used to wipe your butt with.
That's still true in the Middle East today.
Right.
Routine.
It
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't, yeah, I think I would have a hard time because I'm left-handed. I would-
Yeah.
No.
So if you eat
So if you eat from the common, you eat with your right hand. Don't ever use your left hand because that's used for wiping yourself, among other things.
And they don't
It's-
have the
right.
water and soap
Right.
and everything for washing.
But
So that's why it's significant here, is because his right hand is withered. Now it is an issue of live or die almost.
But if you, even today, meet with anyone from the Middle East and have a meal with them,
Oh, yeah.
you have to almost sit on that left hand to keep it under control. You don't tear food apart with it. You're only going to eat with your right hand. You don't shake hands with anything but your right hand. You don't greet anybody. A giant insult in the Middle East is to hold up your left hand and show them your dirty hand.
Okay.
I mean, that's
Yes,
it.
it is. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But you have to understand what is happening when Luke adds the right hand, he's saying more than it's just a hand. For us, it's just a
Yes.
hand. But if this one is with him, that means he can't eat from the communal pot. That means he has to find some food elsewhere, and that means he's got a problem.
But the people who this was written to understood.
Oh, they
that.
understood
It was
completely.
very clear.
But we didn't. That's why I wanted to make it clear.
Yeah.
Anything else here that's different? Anything else?
Marilyn Peterson should have been here to hear that with her broken wrist, right?
Oh, that'd be
Yep.
bad.
So, they were rubbing the grain with their hands. It was clear
Correct.
about that. Same thing, dirty hand.
Dirty hand.
Right?
So they maybe they just did this. All right. I'm not going to.
It's not what it says.
Well, it does say between their hands. Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, with
Oh,
their hands.
Notice it's on another Sabbath. It's not the same day.
Yeah.
It's another Sabbath, okay?
Mhm.
Maybe that's true and maybe it isn't. We don't know. We'll find out because in Mark, it seemed to be the same Sabbath. Although he went to the Sabbath again. in Mark.
But see here again, if we know that these aren't necessarily written in order, the author is making a point.
Correct. And that's the idea. The author's making a specific point. Now, let's finish it. They were filled with rage. They were looking for a problem, believe it. They were looking for a problem. And they get angry at Jesus. And then here they only discussed together what they might do to Jesus. They didn't say go out to kill him. Although the Gospel of Luke has Mark's text in front of him. And he sees what Mark said. And he's changing it. It's not so much they went out to figure out how to kill him. It's that they had to talk about what to do about it.
So you might argue that he didn't change it, but rather he reduced the amount of information he provided.
Correct. Absolutely. In this case, I agree that completely. It's simply saying, we're not going to go, I'm not going to say that far. We're going to just say they wanted to do something. They knew they had to do something, and they then discussed that. Mark took it to the end. Okay, they were going to kill him. Well, that's going to take 2 years, almost 3. So Mark may have pressed the issue a bit. That's what Luke is saying here. Okay? Anything else? Okay, and then let's go to Matthew. Matthew 12, 1 through 21, and I'll break twice on this.
Okay, so beginning with verse 1. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain to eat. When the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." He said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which it was not lawful for him or his companions to eat, but only for the priests. Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath, the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and yet are guiltless? I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.
Okay, we got to stop there. That's a lot of different information, Mark. Remember, Mark is also looking at, Matthew. Matthew's looking at the text from Mark, and he's making some changes. Okay?
It's also possible that one of these authors was there and another was not.
Sure. In fact, that's likely to be the case.
Yeah.
So here, it could be wet. They picked the grain. Now it's not a matter of work. It's just a matter of picking. That's illegal here. Luke is the only one who tells us that it was the rubbing that was the problem. Here they just picked and ate. Now, if you ever pick wheat in a field, you need to rub it, get that chaff off.
Yeah, you can't eat that. You can't eat that.
It's highly fibrous otherwise. You can swallow it. Yeah.
Something else that got my attention
Okay.
here. When Jesus draws a comparison between picking the grain and eating the bread of the presence,
Yes.
which would be the greater crime?
Oh, the bread of the presence.
No question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And David got away with it.
And so he's pointing out that here is a much more grievous sin that's been okay by you.
Yeah.
Right.
It had been accepted by you, by the priest, and God didn't have a problem with David for doing that. What's this problem? Yes, that's a very good point. Anything else?
Oh, yeah, well, gee, folks, the priests work on the Sabbath, and that's okay.
It's like pastor. He's always got to be here on Sunday working, right? Yeah, the priests work on the Sabbath. They have to, doing sacrifice. But that's okay. They have a special dispensation from the poor. I'm kidding about that part. To do it, I guess. Jesus is asking them to look more closely at the problems there are here. Problems and solutions. Look at it. See what happens. There are issues here. Boy, he's a technical person, isn't he? Something greater than the temple is here. What could possibly be greater than the temple, which is God's presence?
Jesus.
Why?
Well, even outside of Jesus, there's something greater.
Let me have her answer that first. Go ahead, you first.
Well, because he knows he's going to be the ultimate sacrifice, and the temple is going to be gone.
Okay. Go ahead. Something greater.
Okay, well, so even if Jesus ignored himself,
Right.
something greater would be compassion for humanity greater than this structure or the rules.
Sacrificial system.
Yes.
The Torah. Okay, there we go. Here's the next, and this is going to be the crux of everything, by the way, or most things. You have the law. You talk to judges. They are, I'm sorry, I am told I have to give you this minimum sentence. There's nothing I can do. You're guilty. That's it. There's no flexibility sometimes in the law until it gets written back into it. In the Torah time, there wasn't a lot of flexibility. So the law had to be obeyed exactly as it is, as it was. Jesus is saying, that's not just. True justice allows for mercy, allows for situational differences. This is going to be the problem between the Pharisees and Jesus the whole time. Yes, question, thought, or comment?
Oh, no, I was just trying to, in his translation, they're saying there is
In this
one.
version.
Yes, there is one here. And I'm trying to find that sentence. Oh, that
Right
one
here.
says something greater.
Something greater, right
Okay,
here.
so that could be the idea, whereas this one is...
Is being very specific.
Well,
That's why it's a version, not a translation.
It would take you back to the Greek to figure out exactly what the intended word was.
Yes, and others languages too. So you've got the question of what would possibly be more important than the temple, which is the sacrificial system, which is the Torah, which is the covenant with God. What could possibly be greater than that? The mercy of God, the forgiveness of God, the love of God, which balances out. If you break the law, you're still guilty and you're going to have punishment, but there's forgiveness still. And that's the balance that has been missing up till this time.
Well, we do know that they put the Torah above all reasonable.
It was
Right.
the top priority. Absolutely.
It was it.
Yes, of course. The covenant with God is it. That's it. Again, we don't want to put that down and downplay it. That's very important.
No, but you have
Appropriately.
to. But
they got it.
even within the Torah, there's a balance here and there. You can find, except for,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And when you have two conflicting things, what do? You pick the least bad?
Yes, of course. Come on, let's look at the Roman Church. After a couple thousand years, they got kind of distorted in the process. There was a real thing called a Reformation or something that went on at one point at 1500. This is the way we are. That's the way humans are. As a governing authority controls it, it rigidifies it. Not that that's a real word, but it makes it so rigid so that everybody has to do it exactly in the same way that there's no flexibility anymore. It's, when a body gets all rigid like that, we're dead. It's called rigor mortis. It sets in and it's death. Look what happened then to the Torah from perspective, and look what happened to the Roman Church perspective. Look at what's happening in our own churches. It gets rigid. And maybe, let's not get into speculation. Okay, anything else there so far? Continue, please.
Okay.
Departing from there.
Okay.
He's in the field.
Yeah, so I ended with, there's
Son
something
man.
greater in the temple. Okay.
The Lord of the Sabbath.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Okay.
He left that place and entered the synagogue. A man there with a withered hand. A man was there with a withered hand.
Yes.
And they asked him, "Is it lawful to cure on the Sabbath?" So that they might accuse him. He said to them, "Suppose one of you has only one sheep, and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath. Will you not lay hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a human being than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to him, the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and it was restored, as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him, how to destroy him.
Okay, let's stop there. There are some variations here. Well, this one does have it going from the field into the synagogue. So that would be at the same day, instead of another day, which was in the Gospel of Luke, where he had another Sabbath. Okay? Here they have the Pharisees asking a question
And
of
they're
Jesus.
initiating the
They're
action.
initiating it, correct. Apparently, Jesus noted it, and they now say, well, is this legal? Okay, so what happened? I don't know, but we'll see. Then he talked, now, before, he's given other examples, David and stuff like that. Well, now he's giving another one. Which one did he do? I don't know. Here's we're talking about a sheep. I have a sheep. In the translation it says one sheep. Doesn't mean, it just means any sheep. I have a sheep. It falls into a pit. To get it out, if it's not dying, to get it out is work. You're lifting. Okay? Jesus says, are you allowed to do that? And the law says, yes, you can get it out. Although there's a caveat on that, I believe, that says you can get it out if it's in danger. I don't know that. I don't remember that detail. Okay? So he says, well, apparently it's legal to get your sheep out. Isn't a man more important than a sheep? We go, oh yeah. But the man wasn't dying. He just had a withered right hand. Okay? He could have waited a day. Maybe.
So a person
Unless
could
it's
argue
critical.
that too.
Huh?
Well, a person could argue about that too, because Jesus moved around a lot.
Yes, he did.
He may not have been available for healing the next day.
It's true. But he could have been if he wanted to be.
Don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but he isn't gonna. That's an issue. Good point. Okay. So he stretched out, restored it, and now going back to Mark, he says, well, they wanted to conspire against him, how they might destroy him. What does your little translation, your version say?
Let's see.
It's probably somewhere
How to
around
kill.
to kill. Okay.
Call the meeting about how to kill.
Okay. Any questions so far on what's happened? He's been in the field. There's an issue about the grain work. He goes into a synagogue. There's a question about working on the Sabbath. Okay? Any questions so far, thought or comment?
Well, the one thing that I was thinking about is the destroy him into this whole thing, because in reality, they probably weren't offended that someone worked on the Sabbath. They probably saw that sort of thing all the time in one capacity or another.
Yeah, common.
Because people cheated.
Yeah, of course. We always do.
But-
You speed.
But
I follow.
in this case, he also embarrassed them. He showed their faults. And what is going to raise your ire more than something personal?
It's not, yes, very good.
I think it's
Excellent.
all just doing that.
Well, yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Okay? Yeah, he's flat out embarrassing them. They don't like that. They're going to get angry, as they did in the Gospel of Luke, and they're going to want to talk about what to do to the point of finally deciding, we need to get rid of this guy. Even this early in the ministry, that seems to be, it's typical to make that decision. It wasn't just because Jesus, although they're angry enough to do it. But anybody who's helping to violate the law and encouraging others to do it, they must be moved aside. Somehow, they've got to be discouraged. No? Okay. Go ahead and finish that. But Jesus is aware of this.
Okay. Starting with verse 15.
Okay.
When Jesus became aware of this, he departed. Many crowds followed him, and he cured all of them. I'm assuming this was
Yes.
on the same day.
Yes, of course.
And he ordered them not to make him known. This was to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet Isaiah. Here is my servant, whom I have chosen, my beloved, whom my soul is well pleased, with whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will proclaim justice to the Gentiles. He will not wrangle or cry aloud, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. He will not break a bruised reed or quench a smoldering wick until he brings justice to victory. And in his name the Gentiles will hope.
Wow. Wow. That's where we stop right there. That's good.
Okay,
Okay. Whoa. There's a lot being added here.
sure.
Like what?
Well, so the Gentiles were the hated people.
If they're non-Jews.
Yeah, and they didn't practice their faith the way a Jewish person would.
Not even close.
The Gentiles were considered dirty.
Yes, they were.
They didn't
Unclean.
abide by the Torah.
Not even tried. They had many gods. Okay, it's polytheism. Oh yeah. This Gentiles is a problem. But here at the end of it, Matthew is adding that in him the Gentiles will hope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll get to that. Anything else?
And just the fact that, and of course this is after Jesus' death, that this is being written.
Correct.
That this, Jesus fulfilled this prophecy. Look at what he did. Look at who he was.
Yes.
Hey, be realistic though. We're Gentiles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And in him we have our hope, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Any questions, thoughts, or comments?
I think that hope is probably, if not one of the most important parts of the whole lesson.
Oh yeah. It always is. The whole thing is that's the gospel. Faith, hope. Okay.
One of
Yes.
the lines here has been very meaningful to me in the past and even now. He will not crush the weakest reed or put out a flickering candle. We don't have to have the greatest faith in the world. We just limp
You
along.
don't
where-
have to be perfect.
We limp along, and he's still going to love me, and even when I have doubts and fears and blah blah,
A very good point.
I guess I see those words a little differently, and that I read that as he's not calling attention to himself. He's going about what he's doing very quietly. Now, granted,
Oh yeah,
he
we're
got a lot of
fighting,
it. Yeah, he got a lot of
That's the
attention
part of
for
it.
it.
Yeah.
But he wasn't calling attention to himself. In fact, he was telling people, don't tell
Shut
anybody.
up. Shut up, don't tell, yeah?
Yeah.
Don't spread this. So that's, you both have different parts of that prophecy that you've referred to. Very good. All right, now let's look at how it all came about. The celebration of the Festival of Weeks would be happening in Jerusalem on June 17th of that year. The festival is also called Passover because it came 50 days.
Pentecost.
Did I say Pentecost, Passover?
Yes.
Oops, it's called Pentecost.
The other,
Yeah.
Oops, my apologies. Because it came 50 days following Passover. 7 weeks. Okay. Also known as the Feast of Harvest, it was a one-day celebration at which 2 loaves of bread, got the loaves of bread part there, made from the first wheat of the new harvest following the spring rains, were offered to God. Okay, do we understand now what's going to happen? It's a one-day celebration where you take your first wheat and you make 2 loaves of bread and you offer it to God. Sounds like something David did. Yeah. Hey,
And you're offering it to God before you eat anything.
Absolutely, always the first fruits. Okay. On Monday, June 7th, Jesus and his disciples.
wait, go back.
Sure.
Okay, first you have June 17th, and then you have June 7th.
Right.
So is the Monday, that's predating?
Good.
Okay.
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 What's happening is on
Oh,
the
this is
17th, it
coming
will
up.
be the
Okay,
festival.
okay.
But we haven't got there yet.
Okay.
He's still up in the Galilee area.
All right.
That's good. So, on the 12th, he's going to leave. On Monday, June 7th, Jesus and his disciples left Galilee and journeyed south to Jerusalem. It does take a few days to get there. Okay? They arrived in Bethany, Perea, late on Thursday. Bethany, Perea is down over here on the eastern side, right opposite Jericho. Okay? That's where John did his ministry. Okay?
So was there a Jericho in these days, or is it the
Oh,
old
yes.
rubble?
This was the new Jericho.
Okay.
Okay. On Friday, they went up from Jericho to Jerusalem. Let's take a look at this. Okay. Let me make it bigger. Okay. You're down here, you have the Jordan River, you come across, and you can go one to either the Old Testament Jericho or the New Testament Jericho. They would have gone through the New Testament Jericho and traveled up the Wadi Kilt to Jerusalem. Okay? So, coming across the Jordan River, they travel up Jericho and up the Wadi.
Okay, which is a valley that water can run through.
Could run through, yes.
Okay.
And the Romans had rebuilt the road along there, so it's a pretty nice road. If you travel up this way, you run into all sorts of other issues. It takes a lot longer, it isn't well maintained, and there are lots of caves and places for people to hide and burgle you. Okay. They stayed overnight on the hill north of Jerusalem in the vicinity of the village of Nob. Okay? I'm going to expand that a little bit so you can see it. You come up here, there's Jerusalem here, and there's Nob, just to the northeast.
Oh, it's really close then.
Yeah, it is, within a couple miles. Very close. Okay? This is what it looked like when I was there. That's the university on top of it now. But this is the hill on which the town of Nob was located, the village of Nob. They stayed overnight, let's see, on the hill north of Jerusalem, only 2 miles northeast of Jerusalem. On Saturday morning, Jesus and his disciples stirred up a controversy when they walked through a wheat field, such as a wheat field. near the town. The disciples picked and ate raw wheat for breakfast on their way to the town synagogue to celebrate the Sabbath. Some legalist thinkers saw them do it and confronted Jesus as he approached the synagogue. Perfect time. You got him, you know where he's going. That's the time and where you go. It was not a matter of theft, because taking grain from a neighbor's field was allowed by law. When you enter your neighbor's standing grain, then you may pluck the heads with your hand, but do not wield a sickle in your neighbor's standing grain. Deuteronomy 23. In other words, don't harvest it to your profit. You can grab a little something to nibble. Okay, that's appropriate. Under the conditions that one did not harvest the grain, but rather just took a small amount to meet your immediate needs. So any question there? The action of the disciples caused a problem for the legalists, because to rub grain between your hands to remove the husk was considered work. In a life and death situation, this was acceptable even on the Sabbath. But Jesus and his disciples were not starving and should not have worked, harvesting and thrashing on the Sabbath. Does this make sense now? Okay, and that's the law. Jesus responded to the concern by indicating that it is also acceptable to meet basic needs on the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man, he said. The law must now be balanced with love in order that there be true justice. Remember how David here at Nob was allowed to eat the bread that had been offered to God, which no one except the priests were supposed to eat. Now I can show you this one. Okay, it's in 1 Samuel 21, and it describes the story. I don't think we want to bother with, but if we want to, that's where it is. 1 Samuel 21. And it was at Nob. He was not starving. If David's need was more important than the law, said Jesus, then maybe the Sabbath law is not as important as a person's needs. God is less concerned with the law than with love for one another. Right? Isn't that what we've always been taught?
Well, Jesus would be the one who made that proclamation, and
Yes.
no doubt these people from the temple had not heard or understood that. That would be
Or
news.
they never interpreted it that way.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. Because there are many places in the Old Testament where mercy is involved, and forgiveness is certainly possible.
But we also understand Jesus as the authority, and they did not.
Oh, that's true. That's very true. They did not accept it.
Where is it in the Old Testament where it says God is speaking to one of the prophets and he's really kind of upset? He said, I desire mercy
And not sacrifice.
not sacrifice.
I don't remember.
I hate your sacrifice.
Yeah, they discuss, yeah. I'll have to look it up. I don't remember offhand. But yeah, it's precisely, that's going to be the issue. The sacrificial system, which did allow for forgiveness, you have to go through their system to do it, as opposed to mercy. That is, the desire to love. A little while later, they entered the non-synagogue, where Jesus encountered a man with a withered hand. The man's life was not in danger. The religious legalists said nothing when Jesus asked if it was acceptable to do good work on the Sabbath. Is it allowable to do good work on the Sabbath? You know, these dinners we hold here and helping people and the helping hands thing, is this all allowable?
So really, how could the Pharisees, or Sadducees for that matter, how could they answer that? Because their law says you do no work on the Sabbath,
And they work on the Sabbath.
and their law says, except for, right?
Except for.
And so that's kind of a catch-22 question.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. And Jesus knew it. They had answered in their way. He was going to answer it in his way. Okay? Instead, they waited to see if Jesus would violate the letter of the law. The injustice of their mistaken priority of holding the law to be more important than love angered Jesus. Yes, Jesus was a man and had emotions.
Yeah. But the love here may not have been emotion. That can be a verb.
It is an action. That is
Yes.
absolutely
Yeah.
true. Okay? Yes. The love is the commitment to doing God's work.
Mm-hmm.
Good. If frustrated, it frustrated Jesus that they were unable to be flexible in their thinking. Jesus healed the man's hand anyway. Jesus chose to push his point about the law and love. An animal that had fallen into a pit was not necessarily a life-threatening situation, but it was acceptable for the religious leaders to get the animal out. How much more acceptable would it be to help out one of God's people? Not only did he contend that a person was allowed to meet their basic needs on the Sabbath, but they should be allowed to do good work on the Sabbath also, such as cooking a meal for a banquet for the church council meeting or whatever. If you're cooking for God, not just basic needs, then that's also an acceptable work, preparing food, for example.
So I have another question that I had not thought of before, but
Sure.
there are many things that people do that would have to be done every day.
Yes.
If you have cattle that need milked, you can't let them go a day between milkings. You got to milk them twice every day.
That's right.
If you have,
Otherwise, you're injuring your animal.
yeah,
And that's illegal.
if you have a herd of sheep, they need water, they need food,
They
right?
need protection.
And so a shepherd would have to work 7 days a week,
That's true.
as would somebody with a milking herd.
So would a mother.
Sure. And I guess what I'm getting at
Men, of
is,
course, can take the day off.
yeah. But it seemed to me that when you look at these laws, they don't take any of that into account, I don't think.
They have been well discussed.
Which tells me that that allows the Pharisees to be more pious than the real people.
And more controlling.
Yeah.
See, the problem with situations like this is that it's a control issue, a power issue. Those who have it eventually abuse it. It's just absolutely the way we are. It's inevitable, for good or ill. So yes, the law had been, after all these thousands of years, okay, and the law began a long time ago, 1,500 years before Jesus. In that time, it had rigidified into such a thing and had been so talked out that they could tell you exactly what you were supposed to do, regardless of your situation. And that's difficult. It needs to be more flexible. God is more flexible. God allows for forgiveness and mercy. They had problems with both. Okay, when Jesus had healed the hand, the religious leaders left the synagogue humiliated and angry, and sent a blistering report to the superiors recommending the death penalty for Jesus for violating the Sabbath laws. On Exodus 31, therefore, you are to observe the Sabbath, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death. For whoever does any work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his people. That's supported of the Torah. That's the covenant with God.
So that's like the people selling the things in the temple, selling the money, selling the doves. They do that on the Sabbath?
I don't know. I'll have to look that one up. That's interesting.
Curious?
Yeah, it is curious. Certainly sacrifices were happening on the Sabbath, right? Oops.
Yep.
They wouldn't have been Gentiles, would they?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
They couldn't go there.
Their
No.
things wouldn't be.
No. They could go into selling.
Well, but what I mean is, so
it wasn't.
yeah.
Yeah. It was, let's put it this way. I suspect that the prophets came back to the Pharisees in appropriate ways to buy those good, clean animals, etc. Okay, so
Not to the priests.
yeah, to the coffers of the temple. Let's call it that way. So what we have is doing this and eating it is okay according to Jesus because they're meeting their needs. Healing someone and doing a good work on a Sabbath is a good thing and is acceptable to God according to Jesus. And then to save a life is also acceptable. So doing good work and even taking care of your basic needs are both acceptable on the Sabbath. Any question?
It should be.
At the same time, we all need a break, and this is one thing about the Hebrew tradition. Slaves shouldn't have to work 7 days a week, 365 days a year for the 5 years that they're going to live. Everybody needs time off. Our culture used to allow for 2 days off. And the one day was blue law. You're not allowed to work on this Sundays. Remember?
Everything was closed.
Everything was closed. That was the rigidity of it. Nowadays it's, oh well, gee, that was available. Now we'll have all our sporting events on that day, and everybody can do this, and we'll go to that, and nobody goes to church because we're busy relaxing.
So there was a place here in Lake Stevens, they're now closed, Greg's Custom Fishing Rods. They were closed on Sundays.
Ha!
And
Oh,
it irritated some people that he was closed. It's like, okay, it's his business, and he's a Christian. I mean,
I'm sorry. It says don't work on the Sabbath. No,
Hobby Lobby is closed on Sundays.
yeah,
same idea.
right.
Yeah.
And there's a and if they suffer from it, too bad, so sad. Are they doing what they are called to do in their own mind, what God calls them to do? Yes, that's fine. But some others should not be pressing it and pushing a legal position on it. Okay, it's their choice. Okay. All right, any questions, thoughts, or comments to fill it out? In that case, next week when we get together, Jesus will heal a lame man.